Look how pretty it blooms. It's still very early in the season, hardly anything else blooms, at leastways not among the trees and bushes. But this one, as you can see, is all out, blooming like crazy. Yet in my climate, even though it's technically already spring, we get at best 6 degrees Celsius during the day, but -4 at night. So technically spring, but the weather conditions are still very much winter-like. What I'm getting at is that in this type of climate you won't be able to plant anything in the garden yet. Basically it would freeze to death by the next morning if you tried. But some trees are so hardy and so well adapted to the cold, they're able to bloom despite the ongoing freeze of the early spring. And as I'm filming this, I'm not sure if you can tell, but it's actually still snowing. There's a light fluff in the air, very light snow, but it's snow. It's still snowing. I mean, today we're hardly above zero, very cold, quite windy and snowing, even though technically it's already spring. This here is Blackthorn. It's a deciduous shrub from the rose family, and like the rose bushes, it also grows nasty thorns that can do a good number on your clothes or the skin if you're not careful. But unlike the rose thorns, Blackthorn's thorns are not curved but straight and are longer. As seen here, Blackthorn shrubs tend to grow on the fringes of the woods, where they create this impenetrable barrier. I mean, the foliage is dense and is riddled with these sharp thorns. You truly wouldn't get very far if you try to push your way in through one of those. You would in fact regret it in a flash. They seem to like the sunnier spots, and within the forest they wouldn't get the amount of the sunlight they need. And because they're a bush rather than a tree, they don't really grow tall enough, so the forest tree canopy would keep them starved off the sun. That's why you find them on the edges of the forest, like here, not within them. And this highlights another strength of Blackthorn, who aside from being frost resistant, is also drought resistant. Seems like whatever you throw at it, this bush can take it. A truly hardy plant, I'm not kidding. As you would guess from the name, the bark of Blackthorn tends to go toward black. Did you hear that? That was a pheasant, a game bird. But it quickly goes toward gray as it branches out. Also the bark gets a little smoother as it branches out and begins to grow these thorns, which I've already talked about. The leaves that grow on Blackthorn are small and don't usually appear until after the flowering. You may remember from my video about the alder tree, which is similar in that it grows its flowers before it grows any leaves. And alder grows flowers even earlier in the season than Blackthorn. Talk about tough plants, right? We are now in April, and as you can see, blackthorns are already starting to bloom. Some flowers are already in full form, others are still buds, soon to open and go into full bloom as well. And all this happens while it's still snowing. The flowers are white and are on a smaller side, they're kind of smallish flowers. They grow to have a diameter of about 1.5 centimeters and consist of 5 petals. These flowers are hermaphroditic, meaning they're bisexual. Such flowers are otherwise known as perfect flowers, because they combine both sexes in one structure. Perfect flowers like these blackthorn flowers contain both the stamen, which is a male reproductive organ of a flower, and the gynecium, which is a female reproductive organ of a flower. The pollination of the blackthorn flowers is done by insects, because as part of their reproductive strategy, these flowers produce nectar, which is of course important for beekeeping if you're a beekeeper. Once pollinated, these flowers will turn into berries. The berries are purple on the outside, the skin is purple, but inside the pulp is green, kind of greenish, maybe to yellow sometimes. These berries have long been used to make jams, wines, distillates, or teas even. And they're also used in folk medicine. The flowers themselves are also medicinal. They have a diuretic effect and are also used to treat digestive disorders, diarrhea, and things like that. I don't currently have a need for blackthorn flowers in my medicinal cabinet, so I'm gonna leave them all be and will return here in the late fall to harvest the berries. But no matter how careful you are, harvesting blackthorn berries is bound to leave you with hands looking like you played with a very scratchy cat. Some people avoid it by placing a sheet under the bush and then smack the branches with a stick until the berries detach and fall onto the sheet. But I don't like to do it like that. This bush indeed is hardy as hell, which I told you earlier, and it can take the beating, but I still don't like the idea of beating the plant, as you are bound to cause at least some damage to at least some branches this way, and I just don't like the idea, so I'd rather risk getting my skin scratched. When fresh, blackthorn berries are extremely astringent, and I mean astringent with a major capital A. They are perfectly edible and medicinal, but astringent like all hell. So astringent, in fact, that if you eat one, you'll get the driest and most puckering mouthfeel you've ever had. You won't be able to swallow for a while, that's for sure, and you'll hardly be able to speak. If I understand it correctly, it's the high tannins content that gives the berries the astringent properties. Those tannins are reduced after the berries have been exposed to the freezing temperatures, so for direct consumption, it's best to harvest the berries no sooner than after the first frost of the fall. In my latitude, blackthorn berries are hardly ever ready for harvest before the first frost anyway, but if you live in warmer climates and want to make the berries palatable, then the trick is in exposing them to the freezing temperatures by storing them in the freezer for a day or so. They'll be much sweeter then. Drying the berries also has the similar effect. So there, blackthorn, a useful, multi-use actually, shrub that can provide sustenance and medicinal benefits. Plus its wood is hard and durable, so it's been a choice wood in cane making for centuries. But as I've already said, I like to live as much in harmony with nature as possible and don't like the idea of cutting a branch of a living tree just to have a walking stick. I would look for an already detached branch instead, or would find another way to obtain a walking stick which doesn't involve adding a wound to a living tree. There you go, my friends. Get to know your blackthorns. It's well worth it.